live. Give me a second here. Okay, it looks like we're live. I just got the alert on my phone. So let me open up my notes from today, and then we'll dive into the review. So today is gonna be from. Let me make sure this is good over here. Let me see this. Yo 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 yo. Okay, cool. Okay, so today is gonna be top-down analysis, very quick. On NQ, and then we'll also talk about the position that we took during the New York session, right, on stream, and things we could have done better, things we can, just work on. But we still ended up closing out a green day, which is always a blessing. I think today was a little bit more choppy than our normal days that we've had. The higher time frames are just, that daily, we're going to have to figure out that range. So I'm going to give it just a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and put the charts up over here really quick. And then we'll jump into the top-down analysis here in about 30 seconds to about a minute. Okay. And then I want to make sure that I can see the chat here. That way, if you guys have any questions, like I said, my goal is to go live at least for these trade reviews going forward, and to at least provide value as much as I can with those. But then as we open up the Discord to, really focus on people who are applying the concepts that I actually personally trade, and who I can work with one-on-one and stuff like that to help them grow in their trading career. Okay. So we'll give it, like I said, just a few more minutes, and then because I have a few notes myself that I need to look at from today. Go back here. Where was that at? Okay. Yeah, I've got definitely some notes to go over here myself. Okay, cool. So for the trade review, okay, so we talked about early this morning inside the chats, we talked about, and on the stream, we talked about seeing price possibly make its way up and delivered through the previous day high. Now, one thing we did see, let me bring this over here really quick as well, 1 hour and 15s. Just gonna bring this one, and then we need to bring a smaller time frame. Okay, so one thing we were talking about when we looked at that higher time frame was we wanted to see how this daily bar was going to print, but we had an idea of the direction just based on how the market open had happened, right? So today's Monday, Sunday's market open is here, so I'll just kind of give an idea. All right, Sunday's market open is here on NQ. Now, we talked about price being in 50% of this candle that took out traders on the higher time frame, right? So this 4-hour dump candle, understanding where the old lows were, and then that's exactly where they opened the overnight liquidity for Sunday going into Monday. Now, something I've learned when it comes to continuations and ranges is understanding if you're in a continuation or if you're in a markup effect, right? Or if you're in an area or location on higher time frame of supply where you can expect long positions to exit, right? Because we're looking for breaks of structure, we're looking for wick highs, we're looking for old highs, previous highs, etc. For where people are going to place their take profits, right? And so for me, let me pull this in here. So for me, it really made sense since the overnight price had already delivered. If you look at this price here, we delivered from the market open up into, let's see. So we delivered from market open up into, let's say, London's open, already 275 handles. And then before New York even started, right? So this would have been the candle 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. We've already delivered almost 364 handles, right? So, or points, whatever you want to call them. Now, I want you guys to remember something that we will always talk about that continues to happen all the time is that the concepts of trading, guys, are buy low and sell high, right? So if you're looking for positions, right, and you're buying in a position like this, right, like at the New York, if you're bought the New York Open, you've essentially bought in the highs. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying from looking at, a lot of charts and understanding locations and higher time frame zones and areas, I already knew that the influencer or the person that's trying to prove that they're right on the setups was in a trade like this, trying to buy this up to force this previous day high to be delivered. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. There was definitely, I believe, a setup on the buy side, but it's just for me when I'm already in this location and I already have like this is looking at the day from like a note card. Okay, this is how I was taught how to trade. All right, is you can understand where the day's low is, which is this is today's low, right? 24,770. And then this would have been at that moment, right, before New York Open, this would have been our high. So essentially, this area here is what I'm referencing here, right, is that this would have been our high at the moment. Let me make sure I have that here. Oh, excuse me. This would have been our high right here, right? So this candle, because this hadn't opened yet, the New York Open candle. So this would have been our high to our low down there. Now think about it, right? Buying low and selling high. Well, where's the low of the day? Down here. Where's 50% of the range of the day at this point? Everything below the 50% at this point, when you're looking at charts, right? Going into the end of the day, this is all the buy zone, right? No matter how you look at it, if I go look at the daily bar and show you the daily candle, this zone here, right, is an area where price is starting to buy up. Okay, so we'll do this here, all right? As like this is our area where buys should be happening. Okay, now at this current moment, without this, we'll talk about the end of the day as well, but we're talking about this specific high right here. So I'll kind of put a little thing right here on it so we know exactly which one we're talking about. So we're talking about this high here because this high wouldn't even be here yet at this moment. So let's just do the replay mode. Let's just do that. That might make it easier. Okay. So at this point right here, going into New York session, right, 7 to 8 a.m., this was your low, this essentially was your high, and everything below here was, to me, a great buy, right? If you took the buy, at 5 in the morning, which I'm not even trading at that time, obviously great for you. That blasted 100 handles in 1 hour. So now this is the area where I would say, like, anything below here would be a pretty good buy, and this one would be like, like, you would be lucky, okay? Now, if you go and look a little bit higher, right, because you're thinking about the whole day at this point to me, right, everything based on structure-wise, and we're looking at the far right screen, okay, and then also looking left at where supply would be. When I'm looking at this from that note card trading, everything above here is a short to me, okay? Anything that pushes, like if I would have had an overnight trade, right, from the 4-hour mitigation play off 24,300, I'm either getting out at this wick high, the previous day high, or I'm looking at 24,700 key level inside the 1 hour supply, right? I don't personally want to be buying when price is pushing into a supply candle on an H1. Okay, now not saying that they don't work. I'm just saying this is market context. This is having a little bit more understanding of where you're at. Okay, so this would have been how I would have been looking at it from my perspective. Okay. Now, if we go and we look at the New York Open, right, on a little bit smaller time frames, I'll show what position we ended up playing, and then I'll also show how we ended up managing the position that we ended up taking still on the stream to finish the stream, and then I'll show kind of what happened at the end of the day, okay? And so now when you look at this, right, and you look at New York Open, this would have been 15 and 5 window, okay, cool. So now when you look at this and you look at where that open was for New York, it was disrespectful. Okay, let's go to 15.5 here to see this because that way I can show the entry that we ended up taking. Okay, so now we have the very first 15 minutes of the New York Open, which was here, right? 8:30 to 8:45, price runs up and makes a new high on day. And on the 5 minute, right, for example here, you had a new strong body candle close that made a higher high, right, showing signs of strength. So to me, you higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. It does look like a really good shorting opportunity, or excuse me, buying opportunity because of the way the price is stacking to get to that previous day high, but it almost was just too easy. One thing I like to really focus on is where that New York opens. Is it inside continuation? Is it inside accumulation? Or is it inside distribution? Right? So like essentially I want to know if it's in the best spot of the day, like if it was down here or like down at, like if it would have formed like this would have been great, right? At the right time, right spot. But because it opened up here and created this, what I call FOMO and very fast move, this is where they manipulated. So I'm actually going to go down to the 1 minute here as well so I can show the short that we ended up taking. Okay, so the first one that we ended up taking was we had the fast 5 minute push up, right? So this is the first 5 minute candle. Let me move this out of the way now. First 5 minute candle pushes up, right? 830 to 835. Then we had a sign of weakness after hitting that 24,700 level. And then we started to potentially break down in here, okay? Now, where I came in for the first setup that I ended up wanting to take was we had the 5 minute sign of strength. And then inside that candle, 835 to 840, I started to see price get a little bit weak, right? And I was thinking, okay, New York low, right? Because you're always thinking about New York lows and highs of great TP zones because that's where people place their risk. And so me personally, I came into this, I was looking for, I had the fast up candle, the sign of weakness, 37. Then we had like a fair value gap on the 1 minute, basically fill in this area. So I was thinking, okay, cool. We can play this down from here, right? Have a good risk on the high at the high on day at that time, right? Like I'm looking right here in this area. And I was looking for price to play down to the New York or take the New York low. Now, something you guys have seen me talk about, if you guys trade live with me, in those first 15 minutes, I'm very protective of the order because there's so much manipulation, right? So if I felt like I had a pretty good entry on this situation, as price started to make its way down, like lower low, lower high, lower low, and it's starting to make itself closer to that New York open, I have a mantra that I trade by called protect or pay yourself at point of interest. So like I said, this was in the first 15 minutes of the 8:30 open, so we were already protected. Even though we wanted that 1 to 3, right? We had already went break even. We went lower low, lower high, and it started to break lower right here. So essentially when this candle in the 1 minute started to close lower, we protected our position, which ended up saving us and letting us go break even on that trade, right? Now that's just how you're going to play, or how I play personally, at that New York Open. I'm a little bit more aggressive on that risk, okay? And so now what we were waiting on was once that price came back and knocked us out and hit us break even, I was like, well, cool, maybe, this was 845, like so this was 845 to 850. We had another sign of strength 5 minute candle. I was thinking, cool, maybe I'll start to stack into this buy. Now, here's why I did not stack into this buy and continue to wait for the shorts. There was overall market context between ES and YM that was showing very similar pricing. And so I'll show the ES trade around that same time. So let me bring this over here as well. And I really like to use ES the most for this type of stuff because you're going to get the best comparison together, okay? And so when you're looking at NQ and it started to actually break down, as you can see, it starts to break down at what time? 9:20, 9:25, and then this is where we started to see a breakdown from that 24,750 at the same exact time, right? So 9:15 going into like 9:30, right? We're seeing the same price action happen on ES, okay? Now the one thing that makes it very interesting to me, okay, was was how the price had formed, right? So this wick, guys, you got to remember, this wasn't here yet. This is the end of the day. We'll talk about that. But at this exact time, when you're looking left and you're understanding supply and demand, right? Supply and demand, again, it's a real thing, okay? This was supply of orders, right? Going into the future. Now, when I seen this, right, like I said, 9 to 9:15 and 9:15, 9:30, I started to see that they were, even on ES, right? The overnight trader had an amazing trade, right? Most likely they were up, over 100 handles on ES is crazy. Even if they bought where the London low area was and they played this up to this area, they're up like 70 handles at this moment. So I told myself, if I was in this buy position, right? If I was in this buy position, I want two things to happen, and how I'm gonna actually execute to get out of this trade. If I bought in here, let's say on ES, or if I bought on here on NQ, right? I'm looking for old lows like this, or excuse me, I said old lows, old highs right here, or old highs up here to place my TP, to place my limit, right? And so when you start to notice from comparative strength analysis that at the same time, we're starting to break down inside that 67.25 quarter, and then you look at the same time and you look left here for NQ, and we're starting to break down 9 a.m. to 9:15. That made me understand where that open for New York was and where that liquidity would be resting, which would be under that first New York low that was created on the 15 and 5 minute, right? And so taking you guys through there, okay? I'm taking you guys through not just NQ, but the understanding of comparative strength analysis here, all right? And so this is also happening on ES and framing up really good R&R situations down to similar targets, okay? And so let's reframe back to here. So now when we started looking at this on a smaller time frame, so let's look at 5 and 1 minute, I was looking for a sign of weakness on a 5 minute. So you have 845 to 850, 850 to 855, but if you notice, the structure is higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low still here, okay? Then you have 855 to 9, right? New candle opens, new hour, and price is still printing bullish, higher high, higher low. Now, at that 9:15, they were still drawing on the liquidity and still pretty healthy here on that 1 minute, but it was almost, like I said, a feeling of where we were at on the higher time frame location and understanding what to wait for and understanding where that New York low was and where those stop losses were going to be resting. And so for me, I like to take 15 and 5 minute positions, right, in specific candles, and I like to look for 1 minute signals, okay? So when I'm streaming, I'm showing a 15 and 5 window most of the time, just so we can, as a collective, have a really good location on the trades, because I know that if I get that 5 minute location, that 1 minute setup is usually going to be pretty good, okay? And so right here, it's very hard to see because of how this candle just engulfs and falls, but there was a 1 minute signal that pretty much let me know. Now, for me personally, when I frame up a trade, I want to make sure on a 5 minute that I'm inside the last push-up candle. So that's like my entry candle situation, right? At this exact moment, I'm looking for a 1 to 3 risk reward setup, right? Or a 1 to 5 R setup. So if I was to plant this position here, right, and frame up a 1 to 3, sorry, had to read that, and frame up a 1 to 3, I could definitely see that. And a 1 to 5 setup, right, would definitely get us past back down the New York open and through the New York low, right? So we're looking at getting through that New York low is going to produce at least a 6R position, right? And then most likely you've cut that in half, so you're still looking at like 3R on that position. Now, what I looked for specifically, right, two things you can look for is I look for breaks on the smaller time frames, right? So how do you see a move like this before the 5 minute candle is exhausted? Right? You have to have understanding of framework, and you have to have that mindset of thinking in probabilities. Now, there's nothing wrong, I think, if you caught the trade here, because this was still pretty good. Like, let's say it's starting to break down. The body closes lower here at like 28 going into 29. And let's say you took it on the 1 minute like here, right? With your risk at that candle here, right? So 20 handle risk, looking for that 60-point gain. And then as well, still looking for your 1 to 5 to deliver through the point of interest New York low, right? Because a lot of buyers would have been stuck here, and then a lot of their stop losses, right, would have been right under these lows, right? So that was the position that we ended up taking live on the stream today. Was we ended up seeing the 24,750s deliver, and then I started to see right here when price started to break down that I think it was like 745s, 740s. Let's just say 740s to be safe, right? That's where I started to see that position break down, and then had the TP already met. Now, this is what I talk about a lot is if you're taking setups with us, you're looking to grab that 1 to 3. Sometimes you might be in the market just for the 1 to 3 with full volume, right? Like maybe you don't want to cut this position, right? Maybe you've already lost a trade before you got on the session with us. It's really up to the situation and scenarios of the individual trader. But in this situation here, let's say that you took the trade with us, right? Your 1 to 3 delivers, half of your volume comes off, and then you're looking for that 1 to 5 to deliver, which would be, like I said, half of 5 because half of your volumes came off, so that'd be 2.5 to secure your over 3R days, which I believe will keep people profitable as long as they don't capitulate in their emotions and have massive red days. Okay. And so we ended up seeing price deliver. Now, why does it turn into a 5-minute wick inside the inefficiency, imbalance, fair value gap area and just turn around super fast, right? Because you're seeing the buyers from New York get taken. We're in a bullish market, and then you're seeing the shorts, like myself in this position from 750s here or wherever they shorted, start to cover at that liquidity grab, right? And it's obvious when price responds that fast, right? And the 1-minute price action presents that print that we like to see, the mitigation print. We know from that moment that price is probably going to come back up. So what we essentially did was we already had our partial on the trade. I told people in the chat, I said, hey, as soon as it delivers that New York low, that could be it for you, because that'd be over a 1 to 5 from those entries. That you'd be looking at like a 1 to 6 R. And then I said, if you want to, right, because Friday, I think it was Friday, one of the days last week, Friday or Thursday, just continued to fall. I said you could go ahead and secure, right, the 1 to 2 area or 1 to 3 area, but specifically right above this high here at the 24,700 level. And then right after that, as you can see here, obviously price, fills the imbalance. 5-minute sign of strength here, right? 950 to 955. Then you have 955 to 10 a.m. And then they start to play the mitigations to look like as if they wanted to buy up and then reach for 24,800. And they tried to get back to that level, but we were already, once they come back, whatever trailers that we had left, we were already out of the position for a green day. Now, going into the end of the day, we'll talk about as well, because that was really it for me today. I was like possibly wanting to come in here. Okay, so on the copy accounts, I did take that on stream. Then we ended the stream, and then when we came back and I took on my just one high leverage account, I was looking at this position here. I love the timing of this one, right? Because the timing, when you're looking at like a 15 and 5, the timing was awesome. You did have candles close lower, so this is a beautiful type of setup, right? When the actual line graph presents the structure, that's what I really love. So the body candles close lower, right? And they sweep that liquidity, and then we come up, right? And we come right back into the supply candle, right? 5-minute supply candle, and price comes into those areas and cannot close body candles above 24,730. So without it being able to close above 730, that lets me know that area, because of we're so bullish on the day, right, is a good level of supply, especially on a 5-minute. 5 minutes usually pretty good. Now, this is where everything comes into the best algorithmic price rejections or reversals and stuff like that. They usually happen in the first 15 minutes of the hour or the last 15 minutes of the hour. Okay, and so where I was looking for that same similar setup was price broke down here on that 5-minute, right? We rejected, came into the supply, couldn't climb higher. And then this was the 45 to 50 candle, right? And then the 50 to 55 candle breaks down. I'm always trying to position myself, if I'm going to take a 5-minute engulfing candle trade like that, as long as my trade gets inside, right? What I've always talked about here, as long as my trade is inside this 5-minute supply candle, then most likely if I go look at the 1-minute price, it's going to be a relatively really good area, okay? So now if we go dive into the 1-minute price, and we still look at it from the perspective of taking the 5-minute location short, right? You can't anticipate a 5-minute engulfing candle down, right? And me personally, I usually don't play a fair value gap, like a 1-minute fair value gap play like this, to then push lower, okay? I'd just rather understand where I'm at on the 15.5, take my position something like this here, and then you look at that 1 minute and you start to see like, wow, okay, that's actually going to be a pretty good area for where we were at in the location of the higher time frame 5-minute supply here. Now, same situation. Point of interest is going to be key, especially in a consolidating market. We're looking for 1 to 3s. Did the 1 to 3s deliver? Yes, they did, right? So 1 to 3 delivers. What do we do at 1 to 3? We move our stops to break even, and then throughout the rest of the remainder of the day, price comes up and then eventually hits back the break evens and then essentially goes higher. And I'll kind of explain this fast push here in just a second. But on the accounts where we're trading all together, we got our W today. Where I could have done a little bit better is instead of moving that trailing risk to 24,700, I could have just been done on the day with a bigger TP for R multiples inside that liquidity. And so come back and I usually take like 1 to 3 trades max on my higher leverage account. So essentially all I'm doing is I'm acting in the same manner, but I'm just using more contracts. So on a typical trade across 4 accounts, I'll use 4 contracts as my max volume in the beginning. And then on the high leverage account, I'll reach up to 6 contracts, 8, possibly even 10, right, micros, and manage and use the same skill. Okay. And so today, this is another example. I was doing something with a dog and stuff like that, and after I got my 1 to 3 to deliver, there was a 1 to 5, right? It pretty much delivered exactly, especially if you had at least the 720s. I'm pretty sure I had the 720 entry. You would have definitely delivered the 1 to 5 before price reverses and then continues higher, right? So there's plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of times of partial, but I would say that this was definitely more of like a consolidation once they reached up into this area and they were just trapping buyers to buy in the highs. So I like the moves that we took, especially through the New York session. They obviously could have produced a little bit more, but I mean, guys, when you look at this, like I said, if you're doing a combine or you're looking to get payouts or whatever it is you're wanting to do, you need about, if you're looking to pass a 50K combine, you need about 5 or 4 time like wins with small losses and controlled losses to pass that combine, right? So same thing when you get payouts, right? How you do something, how you do everything. If you just don't go into challenge mode ever and you just focus on craft and you're practicing how you would play, that's how they teach you in sports. The game should be easy, right? Practice should be hard. It should be excruciating. It should be, like right now when I'm getting ready to do to myself after I get off this call and just really watch film over the same thing I'm going over right now. And just look at where you can get better and just these little nuances. Okay. Now, the end of the day, they had built up sell side here. There were stop loss build. People sold this area here because it rejected the 24/730s at the right time, which I thought was pretty good. But obviously, there's going to be more sell side build of stop losses above that area as well. And then what they did was, if you just really look at it, they held that supply area and then they never broke lower. They went sideways for about 8 a.m. to all the way to like, let's just say 12 here. They're still going sideways, not really like breaking down, not really breaking out, right? And then they drag people out to pretty much power hour, I believe it is 1400. So this would have been 2 p.m. here, and then right here at, oh cool, the market just opened, and then right here at the what time was this? Oh yeah, 2 p.m. They shoot the price up. Now guys, remember this was the key level, right? We wanted previous day high on those buys, right? And we wanted to see how they were going to respond to this key level. They went in 1 5-minute candle, right? 24,700 up to 24,800 delivery, right? They essentially went almost 100 points. They went from 700 to 80 in that 1 5-minute candle, and then that next 210 to 215 candle opens and reaches up and draws on that previous day high liquidity and then rolls over. Okay, so essentially, right now as we go into tomorrow, we start to look, right? We can already start to see the liquidity on the way up, right? So I'm going to move this here to the end of the day for tomorrow, and we'll kind of talk about how this is going to close out for today, okay? Okay, so 1,700 hours going tomorrow. So now, as you can see, what I believe is low and what I believe is high, I think is really valuable for people because it's taken me a long time to figure out those things. But when you look at the previous day low, which will be here now, 24,000, let's just say 270s, and the previous day high now is going to be 24,000, let's just say 816s, you can start to see the range, if that makes sense, of where people are, right? This is like your high, and then this would be your first, I would say really, really solid fair value gap area on an H1, right? So this is a really good gap area to see in the overnight if they're going to hold this demand of 24,500 or if they're going to slip lower, right, and secure some of that price from overnight from Sunday, right? So I'm not a predictions person. I don't really sit here and try to predict everything that's going to happen. I just get a feel of what price is telling me and where it's saying, and or get a feel of where price is telling me, but also just the direction, right, based on the context of what we have so far going on. And so I want to look at one thing here. Okay, cool. So I was just trying to see what I was looking at there. Okay, and so then when I compare, right, a a 1 hour here and a 4 hour, right, to give a little bit more direction on this play, it's clear to me, right, that this candle, right, regardless of what people say about supply demand, it's clear to me that this candle is acting as a level of supply, right? We've come up in that level last week, last Friday, Friday the 13th, right, where we ended up taking those beautiful shorts, right, and it rejected the 4 hour supply and then broke down. And then now today, it come for anybody that left their stop losses there, right, at the end of the day, comes up, runs them in supply again, and starting to roll over again, potentially, okay? And so the area that I talked about on H1 being an fair value gap, imbalance, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be a key hot area for tonight in the overnight trades. And then also as well, I would say this 24,400 key level. So yeah, we'll see what we get. I'll talk more about the news on the live session tomorrow. But just looking at this going into this overnight session, it looks like buyers are gonna exit some of these positions, and we're gonna see a rollover back into at least 24,500 and possibly 24,450. So I know I ranted on there for a while, but I hope this helps you guys out just from perspective and understanding if you guys are trading live with us. We should be live tomorrow as well, same time, around like 8-10 a.m. Do a quick little outlook, and then we lock in. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. Like I said, let me know if there's anything that I can do to make it any better. Sound quality, maybe it's blurry, whatever. If you are watching the recording, I will say this. Sometimes I've learned is you need to change the settings to 1080p. I don't know why. Sometimes on the phone, like when I'm like at the gym and I'm trying to watch my like own recordings and stuff, sometimes it like diverts down to like 720 or whatever the other like lower quality one is. So maybe try to just change the settings on your YouTube. But yeah, pretty good day overall. Looking forward to the rest of the week and closing out this Q2 with some serious momentum. So I appreciate you guys watching the overview, and have a good rest of your day.